Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that you won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show with your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day to you, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino. How be you on this lovely non-winter day?
We have skipped winter here in Maryland.
Yeah, man, we're going to need one good freeze. Otherwise, I don't think anybody's going to be looking forward to the summer in Maryland.
I dropped $600 on a snowblower. And
hey, Mick, thanks.
I haven't even started that thing, man.
Thanks, my brother. Thanks, yeah. We're going to smack you.
Don't worry, next year we're going to be shoveling out for 68 days and actually the ground, it'll be good.
Yeah.
Anyway, my friend, we got to thank our listeners because you guys are doing exactly what we asked you, and that is spreading the word, and you're getting other friends to listen to the show, and we can't thank you enough for that.
Yay. There's a hand for the listeners.
Absolutely. And, keep doing what you're doing because when we need this thing to get this other level so we can really bring you some cool stuff, and that's all we can say.
Right.
That's all we can say.
That's all we need to say.
We just need you to help us out. You're our advertising. This whole thing is spread by word of mouth. And, of course, when you do get your friends to go, make sure they go to ampsandaxescast.com.
That's right.
And they can check out all the shows there. We have all, it flows really well. The archives are there. You got links to some of our manufacturers that we've had on, and our good buddy up north,
Mr. Jason Seditas.
Yes, and his quick licks are still out there. They will remain out there in
perpetuity.
That's right.
That's right.
And and definitely show him some love. Go to his YouTube page. Check out all of his cool stuff. He's a hell of a musician.
That's right.
You guys need to see that guy play to understand what he's doing because, man, he is a monster on the old 6-string fiddle.
That's right. And he's done some videos for me over on the East Amplification YouTube page, like in the vein of, where he takes the new East Duality and, we set it up to sound like this player or that player. And then he plays just like them, so.
There you go.
So it's all good.
Yeah, man. And I wanted to real little quick type thing. I know I did a product review last week, but I'm doing another one this week. Real quick.
Nice.
I upgraded my Cubase version to 9, and good on those guys, man. They really refined this screen.
Oh, so it's not, it wouldn't be called R-Bass.
No.
Oh, so it's still Cubase. Okay.
Cubase. I like that, though. But they really made it nice now. It's got some tabs in here, so you're not having these blocky extra windows kind of residing. A lot of this software, the windows want to kind of come forward when you want, like your controls or something like that. Well, they did a tab type thing, and it pulls up that way. It's very robust. I'm not going to get into it because, of course, these recording pieces, they can get very, very complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And their layouts are proprietary to them. I mean, it's a DAW, and it's just like any other DAW, quote unquote, but they really obviously have been listening to the users of this product, and they made some really nice features. So good on Cubase there.
Now for anybody, any of our listeners who doesn't know what a DAW is, it's a digital audio workstation.
Yes, and what it will allow you to do is it'll allow you to take a VST, which is a virtual instrument, say like Guitar Rig or any Superior Drum, Easy Drummer, any of that stuff. It'll allow you to take that and bring that in to the audio software and utilize it to its potential. So it'll actually do MIDI and just regular instrument stuff. So that is essential because there's some recording softwares out there that are not designed for that, and you want to be able to use it to its capacity. So
Cool.
Cubase 9, everybody, check it out if you can, or if you have an old version, upgrade. You'll enjoy it.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very cool. Oh, and we do have to, unfortunately, make mention of yet another passing in the music industry. Man, I don't know what. Last year was bad. This year is looking like a mirror image of last year. But another Amps and Axes podcast guest has gone to play with the big band in the sky, Mr. Larry Coryell.
Yeah, man.
He the father of fusion, more or less.
Yeah, and if you check out the episode 139 that he was on, he was just an awesome guy. I mean, he would have talked to us for hours, and he had just gotten out of the hospital for some stuff, and his health was probably failing at that time, but
certainly not optimal,
No, but the good part is, and it's you can go back and listen to this guy's entire history, and if nothing else, that's what we're so glad about.
Oh yeah,
we have this little time capsule now that you can hear it in Larry's words.
Absolutely, which is awesome.
And the same with Elliot Rubinson, man. I mean, you can go back and you can listen to their story the way that they tell it, not the way we're telling it. It's them.
Right.
So, definitely go check that out. And, our condolences go out to his family and his relatives and all. And it's just, man, it's getting to be too much of a normal thing for us. And I don't like this part.
Quite honestly, I literally just got back from a funeral of a friend of mine who I met back in the 70s, and he was one of like 3 great guitar players in this band that I knew that was equally as good as Little Feat. And anybody that has heard their stuff absolutely agrees. These guys were another Little Feat. The band was called Climb a Donkey. My friend's name was Doug Robinson, and R.I.P. Doug. Love you.
Yeah, man.
So,
Jesus.
But on to our guest of the week, who is very much alive.
Yes.
And he's played with a couple of cool people over the year. He played with Joe Ely. Played with some guy named John Mellencamp. Had his own band, back in the day called Storyville, with a rhythm section that you may have heard of, consisting of like Tommy Shannon and Chris Layton, also known as Double Trouble.
Yeah.
So this gentleman is a player's player, and we are happy to have him on the show today. So we're going to take a quick pause and come back with the guest of the week, the one and the only Mr. David Grissom.
Hey, it's Andy Alador, and you were listening to Amps and Axes, so keep jamming.
Okay, and we are back with our guest of the week, the one and only, I believe he's the one and only, we'll find out, but the one and only David Grissom. David, how are you?
Good, man. How you guys doing?
Doing great, man.
Yeah, man.
Doing great.
Good.
And I don't know of any other David Grissom, so to us, you're the one and only.
Well, I do actually. My whole life, I've wrestled with the fact that there's a David Grissman, and
True.
I've gotten called to play mandolin on a couple sessions, and they're really disappointed when I arrive. But it actually really worked pretty good for me when I was out with the Allman Brothers. That I had. There was a very nice, sweet woman, young woman who followed the band around, and at one point, we kind of, she was backstage every night, and at one point she came up to me and she just said, "I just got to tell you, I love your work with Jerry." And anyway,
So you're one of Jerry's kids, huh?
I'm like, he's a little older than I am, but I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah. Never really met the man, or did you? Did you ever meet him?
I met him at NAMM once, and I just, we were both at the Diodario booth. We both played Diodario strings, and I just matter of factly said, "Hey, David, I'm David Grissom," and he looked at me like he didn't know what, like I was messing with him or something. It was like that was the end of the conversation.
I actually met. Did you ever meet Jerry? But
oh, did I ever meet Jerry? Oh no, I never met Jerry. No.
Wow.
No.
But you met the other David that now gets you occasional work.
Occasionally, yeah. But I can't play mandolin, so I just play a capo up really high and try to convince them that's what they really need.
Now I have
That's
a quick
funny.
story because I usually do.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I actually think I saw you with the Allman Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago.
I could narrow that down if you tell me when it was, and I'll tell you if I was there.
Oh, well, now you're really going to tax me. It would have probably been 94-ish, 5-ish, somewhere around there. Maybe?
Yes.
Yeah.
93.
Okay, yep, it could have been. And it was at Meriwether Post Pavilion.
That was my first gig with the Allman Brothers. I flew in.
Yep. The night before.
I flew in the night before. They picked me up on the curb at, I think, at Dulles or whatever, VW, I don't know which one. And I had, a couple of animal cases in a small duffel bag, and the tour bus rolled up about midnight, and the next night I played with them at Meriwether Post.
Yeah, because Dickie was thrown out of the band the night before.
Well, he got arrested.
Yeah, he went to jail. That's right.
He had to take a little time off.
And this was the one that I think I've said this before on the air. I go in, I don't know who Government Mule is, right?
Oh, man.
I don't even know who Warren Haynes is,
right?
Yeah.
And I see this guy playing in this opening band, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, and that was really good.
That's pretty damn good.
It was pretty good. And then next thing I know, I'm going, wait a minute, that's the exact same guy.
Yeah.
And he's getting ready to do another 2.5 hours.
No, I mean, he's a force of nature. I mean, the 2 or 3, I don't know, 2.5, 3 weeks I was out with him, played, 5-6 nights a week, and on every night off, he went out to sit in, and I usually went with him.
Oh my God.
That guy just he just plays nonstop. But yeah, to go out there, and these were outdoor gigs, and so it was, he's wringing wet at the end of his first set, and then there's a 3-hour Allman Brothers set. But
I just was like, wow, it's like 4 hours of playing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and singing too. So he's a badass dude and a great human being, an unbelievable musician, and one of the hardest working guys I know.
Yeah, he's been doing it for a long time, man. But I can't imagine like doing those shows and having a day off, a night off, and not being able to sit still. Just go out and jam with somebody.
I just want to go to the room.
Right. Right.
I just want to go to the room and like where there's no other people.
Right.
And but he was, he just he lives and breathes it constantly.
Wow. And it was funny because years later, I was Davy Knowles, and the Backdoor Slam had opened for him. He was like 17, and it was at down at the power plant in Baltimore. And I went up to Warren and I said, "Hey, do you still do the Government Mule thing, opening up for the Allman Brothers?" And he went, "Man, my hands hurt."
Yeah.
He goes, "I can't do that anymore, man." He goes, "I didn't have any fingers left after all that."
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well. Speaking of Davey and 17 and everything,
yes.
I'm going to do what I do with all our guests.
Absolutely.
We're going to jump in the Wayback Machine, and we're going to find out where David Grissom, not Grissman, was born and raised, and how you got into this wonderful world of music, man. So give us a little history.
Well, I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, hotbed of music, as you probably know.
Everybody comes out of there.
I stayed there for 17 years, and then got to Texas as quick as I could. But I kind of joke about it being a musical hotbed, but the truth of the matter is that there was a lot of little pockets of extreme coolness that I would find. And I started out playing drums because my grandfather kind of dabbled in drums, and he had a drum set laying around. And then I got Revolver, and my whole life got turned upside down.
Oh, wow.
And immediately decided I had to play guitar. And I got a, I did the whole go to the mall and take lessons with the dude with dandruff, and we rented the K electric with the strings about a half inch up off the fingerboard,
yeah.
and start with the Mel Bay Book 1, and that I lasted about a month at that, and I was like, this is not what I had in mind. And then found a guy in the neighborhood that like had a melody maker and a Brown concert, and he taught me how to play Sympathy for the Devil and House of the Rising Sun, and I was off. And off and running, and he got me going, and then I got with a guy that was just he just brought the first lesson. I went over to his house. He showed me B.B. King live at the Regal.
Oh man,
Paul Butterfield, the Butterfield Blues Band, and Magic Sam West Side Soul, and said, you need to get these 3 records. And that's what I did with him for about a year. It was just nothing but blues. And then studied with a guy that was more of a jazz guy that really opened my eyes up to all these other possibilities. But, Louisville was like all the rock bands would come through. And it was kind of a stopover gig, between Chicago and Nashville or Memphis or Atlanta and Chicago. And all the southern rock bands especially would come through. And so I would go out and hear, heard the Almonds twice, but I heard ZZ Top and Marshall Tucker and all the Skinner, all those bands.
Nice.
But at the same time, there was there was some local guys that, played blues a lot, and I just studied what they were doing and hung around them and tried to catch a thing here and there, and then ultimately convinced them to let me sit in and play with them. And then there was a lot of bluegrass music going on there too. And I got a fake ID and was able to get into this place called the Great Midwestern Bluegrass Hall, and heard Norman Blake. And then that really turned my head around. So just kind of grew up in this, before the era of everything is on YouTube, and absorbed the stuff that I thought was cool. And that kind of ran the gamut from Duane Allman and Billy Gibbons to Joe Pass and Norman Blake and Wes Montgomery and Pat Metheny. I mean, whatever, it was just like either it was cool or it wasn't. Albert, and really a lot of Albert and B.B. King. Those guys were really...
Albert's my favorite of the Kings.
Yeah, I think of the 3, consistently, Albert is the guy that just slays me.
Yeah.
And as a singer, too. But B.B. and him both as singers and guitar players. That's, often people talk about the guitar playing, but God is singing. It's just like, forget about it.
Oh, yeah. And I was going to ask you about how old you were at this point when you were starting to sit in, or ask these guys and they finally let you sit in. But you said you got a fake ID, so that kind of narrows it down a little bit.
Well, I would go jam with guys, and my father would have to drive me there. I wasn't old enough to drive. And then, after I got my license, I looked young to begin with, and I was like 16 or 17, and you had to be 21 to get into clubs in Louisville. And some guy in my neighborhood had this board, with the Kentucky driver's license thing. You stood in front of it, and he took your picture, and then you laminated it in plastic. And then all of a sudden, I'm like going into clubs and stuff. I hope I don't get anybody in trouble for saying that, but that was a long time ago, and I don't remember the guy's name.
There you go.
Well, the statute of limitations
Absolutely.
has run out.
Yeah. So
as long as you're old enough now.
I was a spring chicken when I started doing that stuff, but I just knew, I knew when I was 12, 13, this is what I was going to do. There was never any doubt in my mind.
That's awesome. We've had, I can't even tell you how many guests that have said that exact same statement. It said, once this happened, I knew this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, I've been playing.
Drive it takes after that.
Yeah, it wasn't like, hey, I was playing for 6 years and I knew, it was, nope, I did this, and that's when it happened.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I knew I was going to do it one way or the other the rest of my life. Now, was I going to make a living at it? That I didn't even, you don't think about that when you're 12 or 13.
True.
No.
But, little things did continue to happen along the way that were like affirming. and it just felt like from the time I was 13 years old till, and it still feels like that a lot, although I get caught up in life a lot more now, but for a good 10, 20 year period, I would wake up every day and my first thought was, when can I start playing? You know, and what song, and you know, like fall asleep with the guitar in my hands, and did I get that Hendrix lick last night? You know, it was just like, it was like this joyful obsession.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's absolutely the way it should be. So, do you remember? I mean, you mentioned renting the K, you know, with the wonderful action. Do you remember what your first guitar was that you had gotten, like, on your own?
I got the first real guitar that I had was a Fender Mustang Competition Orange with white racing stripes.
Nice.
It's the only way to get it.
And I had, I think, a Vibrachamp amp and a white coiled cord, and I was ready to go.
That's awesome. Me, my Mustang, and my 5 watts of Fender power.
Yeah. It didn't take me long to figure out that I might need a little more horsepower.
That's very cool, though. That's, you know, that was like one of the starter rigs out there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe it. You know, I can still remember what it smelled like when I opened up the case. You know, the brand new guitar and everything, and it was just like magic.
Oh yeah.
I wish I'd kept that guitar.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around.
You know, oh yeah, I know. Don't get me started.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I have a friend of mine that I haven't spoke to in years, but I remember he had a Bronco and a Champ, and it was a Silverface, and I think his brother had bought it new. His brother was probably 5 or 6 years older, and they passed it down. But the wild part was that it still had the chipboard, you know, the cardboard cased kind of, you know, one of those things, and he had this box, and in the box was every string and every tube that had ever been through the amp and the guitar. And I was like, that was the strangest thing.
That is the definition of anal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That is obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
That's almost more than I want to know.
That's hoarder stuff right there.
And I was just like, every string?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, every string. I know.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre.
What are you going to do? Fix them someday?
Yeah, I don't know. It was very, very weird.
I'd have to get an extra large storage locker for every string.
Oh my God, for sure. You'd have to start throwing them in from the top.
Thousands of sets. I mean, thousands of sets.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty different.
So I would imagine. Well, I don't know if you know, when you finally got to sit in with these people, if they actually had a rig or anything for you to set in with, or had you been able to graduate from your little Champ into something that would, you know, hold on stage.
I actually upgraded big time. There was a paper in Louisville called the Bargain Mart, and it was, you know, before the internet. Obviously, before the internet, like it was like 25 cents, and you know, I got wind of the fact that you could occasionally find cool guitars on there, and the whole time I'm thinking, you know, like it was amazing how quick I got onto vintage guitars. It was like it was good and bad. But I found we lived in Louisville, and there was a listing for a Les Paul guitar in New Albany, Indiana, which was just across the bridge, and I got my father to drive me over there, and it was a 1952 Les Paul.
Oh my God!
With the original case, and it was like it was $250.
Oh,
and
dear God.
He loaned me the money, and I got it. And of course, it was one of the weird ones with the trapeze tailpiece and the strings under the bridge.
Oh yeah.
And I just took it down to my local guitar shop and had them just throw a Tune-o-matic on there. And so I got that, and then I got a PV Classic 212 amp.
Wow.
And that was great. And that was great until I played through my one of these older guys' Blackface Super Reverbs, and then I was ruined. And the PV didn't sound as good as it used to all of a sudden. But Yeah, that Les Paul was really a lucky find.
Wow. I mean, even with the Tune-o-matic on it, I think it was still worth more than $250.
Yeah.
It's so far. It's so long gone, though. It's one of the. Yeah. It's like for forever. It was like if you want a new guitar, you have to trade or sell the one you've got, and but that worked pretty well actually for a while. I got 1980. I was touring with a band down through Memphis and picked up a 1960 Fiesta Red Strat for $375, and that was my only electric and main electric for years. I carried it around the world with me with Joe Ely.
Wow, and, is that who you were touring with when you found it?
No, I was touring with this band that I was in for 2 years. I went to Indiana University for a year and realized that was not the place for me, but I met all these guys that had just graduated from the School of Music, one of whom was Kenny Aronoff.
Oh, wow.
Incredible drummer. And I joined their band, and we toured all over the Midwest, and I was down there. We were playing, one of those things where you play 4 nights at Solomon Alfred's and 3 sets a night, and I met a guy down there who had this guitar, and it was his brother's, and I think at the time I didn't have $375, and we got back to Indiana where the band was based out of, and I thought, man, I was in a music store, and the Musician magazine came out with Mark Knopfler on the cover, and he was holding a Dakota Red Strat, and I was like, I got to get that Red Strat. And I called the guy back up, and he goes, well, with inflation and everything, I think $385 or what, I don't know. It was like it had gone up $10 or something in a couple of weeks. But I said I'll take it, and I still have it.
Oh, nice!
Wow. That's somebody that's really not a good businessman when he's raising the price to try to get rid of something.
Well, I think he knew he had me. I don't. My negotiating or my voice camouflaging skills hadn't really flowered yet.
You still got the guitar, right?
Yeah. I
got the guitar. I tried to sell it once, and this is like most guitar players that hear this will think I'm lying, but I tried to sell the guitar once, and my wife would not let me sell it.
Wow.
It's usually the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, "That's when we met. That was the guitar you owned. You need to keep it." And I owe her one on that one. It's because I still play it. It's mainly just in the studio, but.
That's awesome, man.
Secretly, she's thinking retirement fund.
Yeah. I don't know. God.
Wow, you got a good one there,
hopefully
man.
I'm not retiring anytime soon.
Yeah,
I really don't. If God willing, I'm not going to retire anytime soon.
Well, actually, when you think of retirement fund, you think of Joe Bonamassa's house.
Oh.
Well, I don't even know where to start on that one. I saw some video on Facebook that he did of his collection, like at his house. Have you seen that thing?
It's insane.
There's I think a bunch of them out there. What does he call the place now? It's got the
Bonham Museum.
the
Bonamuseum.
Nerdville.
That's it.
I'm sorry, I was thinking with
Greg. It's almost like I can't believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
The amp, the stacks of Brown amps and the stacks of Tweed amps, and
it's crazy, man.
But more power to him. I mean, God bless him. He's worked his ass off and figured out how to do his thing, and it's but God, those at some point that starts to own you. It's more than I can imagine caring for.
I mean, it's you're right. You do have to at some point care for them to some degree, and not just the guitars, the amps too.
They have to be turned on a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like that seems silly, but when you've got 200 amplifiers, and you got to play. You have to actually. It takes.
Yeah.
You got to plug them in and turn them on, or the capacitors will dry out.
Yeah, for sure.
And
and again, guitars. The guitars don't get better unless you play them. I mean, granted, some of them are probably investment. A lot of that shit's investment.
Oh,
but in order to keep it investment grade, you really have to tend to it once in a while. at some point he's going to have to get a crew of people in there just to start tending to these things.
You got to watch the humidity, and you especially have to watch with certain, like on certain old Gibsons, especially like my J200. I don't know what the pickguards are made out of, but they give off the gas, and they will literally corrode the frets if you just keep them in the case with the case shut.
Yeah. Is that the tortoise shell? Is that actually shell?
It's not shell. It's some sort of composite. I don't know what it actually is. My old J200. It's a real problem. I can't. It'll ruin the end of the frets, and then my Gretsch. I got like a '69 Gretsch that it's doing. That pickguard apparently is made out of the same stuff, and it just, I'm probably up to like 40 guitars now, and that in itself is like, it's like I feel like I have a large family that I have to send to college and stuff. I mean, I'd like you just like constantly. Is the humidity okay in here? And I go out of town and I freak out if my dehumidifier goes off. Could go off or something like that, and then all the acoustics will get ruined. But I have a fantasy about if you could just pare it down to one or two electrics and one or two acoustics and one or two amps. I know that'll never happen, but every now and then I think about that.
If you got to the point where you could get rid of all but one or two of each of those, initially it might feel like you accomplished the goal, but I give it a day or two.
There's at least 7 or 8 guitars that my heart aches when I think about the fact that I let them get away.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, if they were sitting here right in front of me, I could possibly go months without playing it. A couple of them, but they were unbelievable instruments. I do remember that. That was back in Austin when I first got here in '83. I mean, vintage guitars just floated down the river. I mean, there were so many of them, and they didn't cost. Yeah.
Well, they were
I
old.
got down here and I bought a January 4th, 1954 Blackguard for $1,200 with the original case, and. Wow. It was just like every week another one would come through, and then you just took it for granted, and you'd get them and you play them for a while and then trade them back in and get something different, and then one day it was just like that all ended.
Well, it's when they became vintage guitars.
Yeah, the rest of the world caught up. Austin caught up with the rest of the world. It was a kind of a bubble. We were in a little sort of magical oasis down here in the early mid '80s. I mean, musically, lifestyle wise, the population was 50% of where we are now, and the prices hadn't caught up down here, and it was fun. I got to play a lot of really special instruments, and I got to figured out pretty quick that not all old guitars are good guitars, and was able, there's a couple of guys that were down here that really had been doing it for a long time that taught me what to look for, and sort of was able to cherry pick, go through, over the course of several years, 10 Blackguards, not necessarily owning all of them, but spending time with them and be able to cherry pick what I've got now. So that kind of stuff.
Nice.
That's so cool, man.
It is. So let's go back to the Strat and Joe Ely. How'd you get hooked up with Joe Ely? How did that happen?
I moved down here because all the music I liked was coming out of Austin. I was sort of treading water in Bloomington, Indiana, and I was listening to Joe Ely, Lou Ann Barton, the Fabulous Thunderbirds, the Leroy Brothers, all the rootsier stuff that was coming out of Austin, and I knew one girl that lived down here, and she invited me down to check it out, and I went out. I came down here for 3 nights, and went out, to all these dives and heard these incredible guitar players and bands, and flew back home and packed up my Honda Civic with everything I could get in it and turned back around and came back down here. And within, I just hit the ground running, and I'm here 2 days, and I just decided, well, who better to call to find out who needs a guitar player than the guy that writes about music in the Austin American-Statesman? And I just called the newspaper and said, my name's David Grissom, and I just moved down here, and I'm wondering if you know anybody that's looking for a guitar player. And he just, I mean, he was like, he just said, I'm not a matchmaker. That was all he said, and then it was just dead silence for a while. And I'm like, well, geez. I mean, but then he said, but if you're any good, I know a woman who's looking for a guitar player. Her name's Lucinda Williams. And,
oh, wow.
You know, if you want, I'll give you her phone number, but don't ever call me again for something like this. So I called her up, and she said, well, come on over, and so I got the gig. And like a week later, I'm in a caravan of cars driving to New Orleans to play at the Jazz and Heritage Festival with her. And I'm staying at a hotel with, like, it wasn't a fancy hotel at all, but it was in the French Quarter. And in the hotel was Richard Thompson, Roy Orbison, and Grandmaster Flash, and we were all hanging at the pool together. And you know, I've been in Austin for 2 weeks, and New Orleans is like, I've never been out of the country, but I felt like I was in, you know, on the other side of the globe.
Yeah.
So she got another guitar player too, named Derek O'Brien, and he was really in the whole blues scene down here, and he then got me in Lou Ann Barton's band. And at which point I was like, I could go to Antone's anytime I want for free, and I was down there every night of the week. And then met a guy named Roscoe Beck, a bass player who was playing with Ely at the time. And I got a call one day. We did some playing together and hit it off. And one day I got a call. I mean, I was like, it was noon, and the call woke me up. It was Joe Ely's brother wanting to know if I was available to go to Australia with them. And I'm like, I mean, Joe, at that time, Joe Ely was like a god to me, and I'd never met him. And apparently whoever was going to Australia with them fell through, and Roscoe vouched for me. And that was back in the day when, you know, getting a passport was no easy feat. And Joe Ely's brother came over, got all my ID and stuff, and drove to Houston, had me take pictures, and drove to Houston and paid a bunch of money and got me a passport. And then a week later, I'm playing my first gig with Joe in Melbourne, Australia.
Wow.
So it was kind of crazy stuff back then. It was just a blast.
Yeah, I mean, man, it just seems like that was happening. It had to feel like it was happening at light speed, you know, because that sounds like, you know, all within like a month or two.
It was within a couple of months. Yeah. It really was. Although, actually, I did play with Lou Ann for probably 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Maybe 6 months. 6 months before I got the Ely call, and then. But this is within a year of me hitting the ground. I'm in Australia. I mean, it was just like I never dreamt that I would. You know, I'd never been out of like I said, never been out of the country. And here I was. Joe had met a guy named Jimmy Barnes, who was like one of the biggest rock stars in Australia. He was sort of like the Springsteen of Australia. And he brought Joe over to open up his tour, so every night we were playing sold out arenas, and like wow. I'm used to playing for 200 people, but at the time I was just so excited. I was fearless about the whole thing, and it was just like I could never have dreamt how much fun I was having and how much I was learning at the same time. I was just really blessed to have those experiences when I did.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that like you said, it had to be a bunch of fun, but it had to be a great learning experience too, man. And that's
it was,
fantastic.
and honestly, you know, for all the lessons that I took and all the club gigs that I played, kind of got me ready to start learning. And when I got into Ely's band, that's when I really learned about being a musician and what it meant to connect with an audience. But also, you know, Joe to what it meant to be an artist, and not that I became an artist or I am an art, art quote in quotes artist, but Joe was and is, and his music ran the gamut of, these super quiet West Texas ballads to, balls to the wall, all out rocking stuff. And so I learned about dynamics, and it was a 3-piece band at the time. And I just literally I had to figure out a way to fill up the sound of the band. And it really influenced my voicings and my chord, the way I played rhythm and chords. And he, for the 6 years that I played with him full time, I cannot remember one second where he didn't encourage me to step out front and find my voice. And what a gift to have somebody like that. And I watched the way he made decisions. I watched every single night for 6 years. He wrote a new set list before the show. It was never the same show.
Wow.
And he would kind of come into the club or the venue, wherever we were playing, and he just sort of try to get the feel of the place, like what did it feel like that night? And that taught me, just watching him do that and the way he operated influenced me in so many different ways, even down to the way I improvise, like the idea of clearing your mind out completely night after night on the same song. I've learned quickly that if I've had a great night on a solo one night, and I came back the next night and remembered how I started it, and then I did, I was going to do it again, that the second night it sucked, because it was like, that's not what was supposed to happen that night. But just, it was so different than, some of the later experiences I had doing arena tours with bigger acts, where it was like every move was worked out almost, and it was almost like theater rather than live music that was living and breathing.
Wow, that's but it's so cool when the band is structured like that you can do that, and you can actually
exactly
feel it
really,
every night.
Yeah. So all those things did come together. It wasn't like just one of them. And then at the same time, in '85, when I first got with him, shortly after I got in his band, I took my Strat to Australia, and then quite a few other places as well. But it had to still be '85 because I had it seemed like everybody in Austin was playing a Strat. Everybody. And at a party late one night, some guy came up to me, and he was like, he managed a bunch of bands, and he said, "What kind of guitar do you play?" And I said, "A Strat." And he said, "Well, that's good, because if you don't play a Strat, you ain't shit." And I woke up the next morning, and the first thing that came to my mind was I got to get a new guitar. And and so I'd seen that ad that this PRS guitar, and it was seafoam green, and so about that time, I won't bore you with the details, but I worked out this trade to get it, and I traded I'd gotten this old Esquire, and I traded the old Esquire for the guitar, but the guy wouldn't let me have the case. So I got a seafoam green PRS with no case. And then my friend Danny Thorpe, who he and Charlie Wurst did the first vintage guitar show, helped me get a 50-watt Marshall. So that, about the time I really started playing with Joe, we really started touring all the time, I got the PRS and a vintage Marshall, and that changed my approach a lot and really helped me sort of, and then that combined with the fact that Joe just, encouraged me to do my thing, really had a lot to do with finding my own sound.
Now, the Strat, were you playing that through a Super Reverb at the time before you got the Marshall?
No, I was playing through. I had one of those Seymour Duncan convertible amps.
Oh yeah,
do you remember those things?
Yeah, absolutely.
They had modules that you plugged in and out of. It's like the wildest thing on the planet. I think that was what I had at the time. I had a Mesa Boogie that I could never get to do what I wanted it to do, ever. I mean, I tried and tried and tried, but it just it wasn't happening. So I got the Seymour Duncan to sort of do it, but when I got the Marshall and a 412, it was just like, oh my God, what have I been doing all these years?
Wait a minute, this is rock and roll. This is
I mean, I've been trying to get the Duane Allman live at the Fillmore and Billy Gibbons on Tres Hombres my whole life, and why am I playing an amp that has modules you plug in and pull out?
To sound like a Marshall.
Yeah, well, that was really innovative at that time. It really was. I do remember servicing a lot of them, and the only problem was that those connectors became a little intermittent.
They got a little dodgy, but I mean, all kidding aside, is that if you found the right module, those things did sound pretty damn good. I mean, and Seymour is a brilliant dude. I love his antiquity pickups that I use in a lot of Fender style guitars. I think he's just a cool dude.
Yeah. He knows a couple things.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to ask you, did you go back to the guy and go, hey, guess what? I'm not shit.
Oh,
I stopped playing a Strat.
I think it was one of those. It was one of those things where 14 beers in at the end of the night. I'm sure he doesn't remember. He and I are still great friends. And,
that's fun.
But I was so taken aback by that, and I was like, but something down deep inside me said I really need to get a different guitar, and obviously I didn't get rid of the Strat, but.
I mean, if you go in club after club after club, and every guy has that same footprint, it's kind of hard to go, which guy was the guy that was doing the thing?
Right.
Because
it all kind of the Strat. That helps not.
Yeah, it kind of blends together, and then all of a sudden you got this guy that's not playing a Strat, and you go, hey man,
Well, it also, at the time in Austin, there was only one or two places where bands rehearsed, and I can remember rehearsing with Lucinda. He had a place, and two doors down, Stevie Ray Vaughan's down there, and I'm like, I'm looking at me with the Strat, and I'm looking at him with the Strat, and I'm thinking, this, I'm sorry, but I think he's got it covered. And between Stevie and Jimmy, I mean, it's like, and Eric too, Eric Johnson. I mean, everybody just hanging around, and I'm like, I gotta get enough of the Strat thing. I gotta get something else going on.
And the last thing you want is somebody thinking that you're trying to be them.
Exactly.
Because they got them covered.
Well, they got them covered, and the truth is, and I don't know. I mean, I've talked to other people about this too, but when I pick up a Strat, I become a little different person. To me, the book has been written on a Strat, and to some degree on a Tele, and some degree on a Les Paul, but on a Strat especially, I start playing differently. I mean, immediately I'm on the neck pickup, and it's like Wind Cries Mary and Little Wing, and I just play different. The idea that here's this guitar that there's no expectations of, like what it's supposed to sound like, something inside me, and maybe it was hanging around Ely and just watching his fearlessness and go for broke attitude about it. Everything else that sort of struck a chord in me and made me want to forget what everybody else was doing and somehow find my own thing.
That's pretty awesome.
I've heard stories of Brad Whitford talked about PRS and in the early years, and that Paul was trying to make something that would replace the Strat and the Les Paul, and kind of give you that sound. And he said it didn't, but the sound that it gave you was so unique. It was its own. It was its own thing. And that was something
it was close enough. Like if you were playing in a cover band,
exactly,
it was close enough.
You got a drummer pounding through your head. You're going to be like,
you could definitely. I mean, you could definitely approximate, the Sweet Home Alabama thing in one of those positions on the thing, which I eventually took those things out of my older ones and just put in a 3-way toggle. But
you took the 5-position rotary out.
Yeah, the 5-position rotary, which is, of course, I could have, not that I would ever get rid of it. I still have the first two, the 85 and the 87. And the 87 was really my main workhorse as soon as I got it. And it's had the headstock broken twice.
Wow.
but through the Live at Liberty Lunch record and all the early all the Mellencamp stuff I played on, that was that guitar. But yeah, he came up with something new, and and to this day, I've worked closely with them for it's 32 years now.
Wow.
And been through, I've seen it, almost everything, and I really think Paul is the sort of the Leo Fender of our generation. There's really nobody else that's sort of, if you reinvented the wheel in a way, if you will. I don't know if that might.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I tell you what, you have an 85 and 87. I got you covered in the middle. I got a pair of 86s. So
yeah. I mean, those early ones are really fantastic guitars, but the new ones are incredible.
Yeah,
and
I have to say, in all fairness, when I picked it up, I was actually looking for a Hamer at the time, and I didn't want to drive from Baltimore to D.C. to go to the Hamer dealer, so I went to a local guy who's a good friend of mine now, and he said, "Hey, you should try one of these PRSs," and I hadn't played one before, and I picked it up, and quite honestly, it felt like the most friendly guitar I'd ever picked up.
I know, and they got the neck shape right off the bat, and it was like it just like felt so right. For me, being coming from Tellys and Strats. Mainly, even though I did have that one Les Paul for a while, something that's often overlooked, I think, by people is the trend. If you're used to playing Tellys and Strats, your hand rests on the guitar in a certain way. Relative, the strings are a certain height off the body of the guitar, and with a Les Paul, a tunematic with a lot of angle, they're a lot higher.
Oh yeah.
And that you're all of a sudden my hand's in a totally different position. I can't mute the strings the same. With the PRS, it was like the strings were, I guess the way the neck angle was oriented, or was in there, was that the strings were a very similar height off the body of the guitar, and the bridge itself felt very much like a Fender bridge to me. I could immediately just start playing the way I played on it, but I'm getting this, it's like adding another 200 horsepower to what I was used to,
and on top of that, the 25-inch scale,
right? It was
kind of put everything in the middle.
Right in the middle.
So, and
exactly,
it really is a difference. This different company, but Carvin built all their guitars at the beginning on 25-inch.
Oh, really?
And it was weird for me to go to like a 25.5-inch. It felt like I was like in a swimming pool,
I go down a gauge on Fenders. I mean, I pretty much 11s on PRSs and generally 10s on Fenders. I mean, it's a whole different thing. For me.
Yeah.
Wow. So you do 11s on your PRSs?
I do. Yeah.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. It's a man string.
Yeah,
it's a man string right there.
I had those wimpy nines.
I put big frets in, and my signature guitar, the guitar has bigger frets than. I think they've gone to a lot of their guitars using these frets now, but at the time they were using a medium fret, and I always had them refretted with bigger frets.
Like the 6100s, I think?
6100s, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They use a different company now that's, I think, a little more consistent than what they were looking for, but it's that spec. It's that size fret.
I learned that way back. I've told you this before.
Yeah.
When I was doing stuff for Stevie, I was working on an amp, and I had a Strat, and I put 13s on my Strat, and I'm going, I don't know how you play this for a couple of songs, let alone all night, and just completely just annihilate the guitar night after night after night.
Yeah.
Well, I finally got to play number one, and it played like it had 10s on it. And he used 13s. Yeah. It played like it had 10s. And I said, Renee, why? He said, big frets.
Yeah. They were probably 6,000.
I don't know.
Which is even larger.
He called them bass frets, so who knows what they were.
They were big.
But I got onto that pretty early, and I don't know. I don't like that necessarily in all my Fenders, but on the PRSs, that's what they always go in. I mean, that's what they come with for me.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And bending just becomes like heaven.
Yeah, I mean, it literally turns a set of 11s into 10s for me.
Yeah.
And you can get a bloom to the note sometimes with the there's just a bigger string there's just more contact, and they got to be crowned right, just like any fret does. But bending is I can do all my pedal steel stuff with 11s. It's not. It's so,
That's so cool.
Nice. So you mentioned Mellencamp. Let's go there. How did you get introduced to him, or get invited into that camp, Mellencamp?
Well, I first met John when I was working at Karma Records in Bloomington, in between whatever I was doing right after I left the band that Aronoff was the drummer, and he got the gig with John. It might have even been before that. I can't remember. But I worked at Karma Records, and we rented. This is back in the day. We rented VHS tapes, and he would come in and rent movies, and we had all kinds of movies in there, and he would rent all kinds of movies, and that's when I first met him. He didn't know who I was, and he wasn't particularly friendly or anything to me. But I moved a month or so after I got back down here to Austin. A friend of mine up there called me and said, "Hey, he wrote the song. This guy Dan Ross wrote the song called Play Guitar.
Mm-hmm.
It was on the Mellencamp record that had, I don't know, whatever, Pink Houses and all that." And John says he wants me to put a band together, and we're going to open up for him on his tour. So I went back up and did that, and that's where I got to know him a little bit here. We played with the opening act, and 7 years later, whatever, Larry Crane left the band, and they called me and said, I'll actually know what happened was, before that, John wanted to record some stuff, and Larry couldn't make the sessions, so they flew me up, and I played on some of the Big Daddy record, and it went really well. And then, so when Larry did leave the band, shortly thereafter, they just asked me to join the band, and I was with him from 91 to 93, and we did the two, when I was in the band, we did 2 records, Whenever We Wanted and Big Daddy.
Nice.
And yeah, and also the James McMurtry stuff was during that period, the first James McMurtry records that I got to play on.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and that's it's nice to be able to say you on a couple of Mellencamp records too. I mean, but coming from Joe Ely, I mean, come on, that is just so awesome.
Yeah, it was another stratosphere on some levels, in terms of, like, all of a sudden now I can, it was really different in a lot of ways. In some ways were great, some ways were not very great, but I learned stuff that I could never learn anywhere else. And to me, John's brilliance is in the studio, and his ability to take these 3-chord folk songs and to turn them into these anthems that sound like nothing else. They sound like him, and so the process of doing that on 2.5 records with him was just like, I can't begin to say enough great things about what that meant to me and what I learned going through all that stuff.
That's really cool. And he definitely has his own voice. I mean, not just vocally, but musically, he's got his own voice. He's got his, you hear something, you go, oh, that's John Mellencamp.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I haven't kept up with what he's doing now, and we parted on, not great terms, not, I don't know what terms. We parted on no terms. We just parted. And so I don't know what he's up to now, to be honest with you. But I can tell you, just to give you an idea about what I'm talking about, there's a song, he came in with the Whenever We Wanted record. I was sort of the new toy, and it was all about loud electric guitars and make the drums had been the biggest sounding thing on everything, through from Jack and Diane up through Lonesome Jubilee, that, the huge hits. The drums were huge. And when I joined the band, we did this record. He put the drums in a smaller room, and just wanted Marshalls, and he kept telling me to turn up and louder and more distortion and everything. And I was like, cool. And But the second record, then he really wanted to do something completely different. And that was another thing. He was like Ely like that. He really didn't want to make the same record twice. And the first song on the next record called the record was called Human Wheels. And he brought the song in, and it was just, it was like 2 or 3 chords, and it was called When Jesus Left Birmingham. And he just said, he played it for us, and he said, "Dave, give me a lick." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I just started playing a little lick on an acoustic guitar, and he goes, "That's cool. Let's go. Cool. Let's play it like that, like just me and him." And we went out. 5 minutes later, Kenny Aronoff on bongos, me playing my little toy, like little down, 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 down. And then there was a couple of chords that on the release, but essentially the whole track was cut with Aronoff on bongos, me on acoustic guitar, and John sang the vocal.
Wow.
All that remained. That was the final vocal, that acoustic guitar part, and the bongos stayed and are really prominent. And then he proceeded to stack layer upon layer of if you listen to the track, it's a slamming electric track. And it was like, his whole thing was, let's take it out into left field and then bring it back to the front porch. But I mean, I just like watched it. I mean, I was part of it, but I was like watching it at the same time. I was like, this is so different than anything I've ever done, but how brilliant. And at the end of the day, we would do one song a day, and he would have the whole band there, background singers and everything, and you would just lock into one song a day. And at the end of the day, the song was finished.
Whoa!
And
wow.
It was just it was like, assuming it went well. If it didn't go well, you wanted to be anywhere else but in that studio. But if it went well, at the end of the day, it was like you just won the Super Bowl, and it was so exciting to hear everything. We'd finish it and then put it up on the big speakers, and it would just be like, oh man, can't believe we just did that. It was,
that's so cool.
Everybody
works
people
differently.
Don't realize
everybody works differently.
how he is, sort of the depth and sort of the left turns he took to get to some of those things that now are just seem like straight ahead rock anthems, but they were not accidents.
And they didn't start out that way.
No.
Wow.
No.
Wow, that is so cool. So you parted ways, and all this knowledge and experience that you've gained up to this point, I'm sure you took and turned into Storyville at this point, right?
I did. Yeah, that was the next thing I did, and I had an offer to go join Rod Stewart's band, and when I left Mellencamp, it was right after I had gone and done the 3 weeks with the Allman Brothers, and that was sort of what reoriented me back towards that joyful thing I was talking about earlier. And I just realized that it was kind of time to move on. And so when I left, I had 2 things that came up. That was the chance to start this band called Storyville or join Rod Stewart's band. And I just felt like, even though the Rod Stewart thing was going to be like, 1.5 times the amount of money I was making with John and everything, I felt like if I did that gig, it was going to be country club rock tours the rest of my life, which is not a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. There's wonderful things about doing that, but this chemistry that I kind of felt when I got together with Chris Layton and Tommy Shannon and Malford and David Holt felt like something that could be really, really unique and really special. And it was the only time in my entire career that my wife thought I was making the wrong decision. And
wow.
I've always gone with my gut, and my gut said, you got to do this. And once again, it was what I learned from doing it that was the payoff. We didn't get rich. We never really got above a certain level of success. But 5 years of paying dues, and just a whole nother circumstance that, these things, it's just, some of these experiences build character, but in addition to like teaching you a lot more about music.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole thing, I mean, making that move, even though you've got Double Trouble behind you, at that point, it's you. You're the front man. It's not Joe, it's not John, it's David.
Well, it was us. I mean, Malford Milligan, the singer, was really the front man, but it was as a band. It was the five of us. It wasn't. You're right. It wasn't. Well, I wasn't a side man. We were all equal partners. And I can remember doing Austin City Limits the first time, and I'd done it 3 or 4 times with other people, and it just felt different. I'm like, I got nervous. It's like, this is our band. This is our band. I'm not up here playing with somebody else. And so, yeah, it was a different thing.
Yeah, what was I going to ask you? Did gear change at all at that point? I know from that, from the first time you got PRS, you've pretty much been a PRS guy.
Yeah, it didn't really change much at all. I mean, I worked with PRS, with Paul specifically, on constantly tweaking the guitar and the pickups. I started tweaking pickups pretty early on. 'Cause the early pickups were real mid-rangey, and that they were cool for a certain thing, but I wanted something a little more bell-like, a little clearer, so we started tweaking pickups. And then in 91, right when in the middle of Mellencamp, right when I joined Mellencamp, I started talking to Paul about a completely different guitar, and I ordered this instrument that had a lot of different things on it that PRS had not done before. And I got the guitar at NAMM in January of 92, I think, and that guitar turned that exact instrument into the McCarty model. It was, literally the exact guitar became the McCarty model. So when Storyville, I started, then I was constantly tweaking on that guitar, and then got one with a tremolo, and that was the model that I played with Storyville. But it was still Marshalls. Oftentimes you have to pare it down to a 212 cabinet playing in smaller places, but still doing the PRS Marshall thing.
Nice. I'm looking at 10 pages of discography here that you've been involved in some way, shape, or form over the years. It's pretty staggering. You got to work with John Mayall and Buddy Guy.
Yeah, I've done 4 records with Buddy Guy. I did one a long time ago with Eddie Kramer producing, and then I did 3 of the last 4 records, of his last 4 records, Tom Hambridge produced, but that was, God, talk about craziness, such a thrill, really, really, really unbelievable experience. And, working with Mayall, I did his Wake Up Call record, and then he cut one of my songs, What Passes for Love, which he cut it before we ever recorded it with Storyville. But both of those experiences were it's just hard to describe. I don't know. If I'm sitting there, I'm in the studio with Buddy Guy, and I'm like, it's just surreal to begin with. And like a bunch of the songs we did, a couple of them at least, the whole first verse is just me playing guitar and him singing over the top of it. And I'm like, wow, it was really special and really a cool thing. And the band that Tom Hambridge put together, he put together, guys that just totally understood it and the music inside and out. Reese ended up playing keyboards.
Oh,
nice. Reese Winans on all the records that I was a part of, and then Willie Weeks or Michael Rhodes on bass. And it was, they're experiences that change you, and it's sort of one of those things that, having done it and everything, it's just like hard to put into words, but it's like I listen back to the records, and it's almost like, did I really do that?
Yeah, I
think
there's. Go ahead.
It's just I recorded with Ringo Starr while he was playing drums, and I was playing acoustic guitar. Mike Landau electric, and I'm just looking out of the booth, and there's a silver pearl Ludwig kit, and it's Ringo's playing drums, and I'm like, it's like you have an out of body experience. But at the same time, he's just a cool dude. He's like, it's like you sort of while you're doing it, it's like it's just you're lucky, you're grateful to be there. But it's like later when you go back and reflect on it, it's like, wow.
Yeah. I can imagine.
It's got to be surreal.
I can only imagine.
And he, his touring band that goes out like once a year or so is full of non-slouches as well.
No kidding.
Oh my God!
Except for Steve Lukather.
Yeah. Right.
Well, he's coming along. Steve's coming along.
Yeah. He's going to be good someday.
Yeah, I think when he gets his reading chops together, I think it'll all happen for him.
Dear God, man! I mean, that band just gets better and better. It's crazy.
That guy's a nut, and what a monster.
Oh yeah. If you chopped his head open and his brain spilled out, it'd probably be nothing but notes on the ground.
Well, but he's a rock guy,
Sure.
But the thing is he's got he's got more horsepower than he could ever possibly use, and you could just the solo he did at the end of Dirty Laundry, you could just stop there for me. I mean, that's like when I heard that solo, I was like, whoever that is a bad dude, and found out later it was him. And he's a super been always nice to me, and we've played together several times and had a blast doing it. And he's just a great musician.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, I have a question about the signature model.
Okay.
So I've got a picture here, and I'm showing Jeff as we speak.
I see it.
Now you have 3 knobs and the 3-way switch. Now, is that 2 volumes and a master tone, or is it master volume and 2 tones?
It's 2 volumes and a tone.
Okay.
And the knob closest to the bridge is the volume for the bridge pickup, because 99% of the time that's where I do most of my business, on the bridge pickup.
Okay.
And it really, for years the whole PRS thing was 1 volume, 1 tone, and I saw the Royal Albert Hall footage of Zeppelin, the early footage, and I saw Jimmy Page getting all those, every tone that was on the first 2 records out of a Les Paul, and he was just manipulating the volume controls.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just literally said to Paul, I think we're leaving money on the table here. There's a lot of sounds that we're just not able to access with only 1 volume control. So that was the reason we put 2 volume controls on. But again, I've seen a video of Joe Bonamassa picking up he's being super cool to this young kid who's got one of my signature models, and he just grabs the guitar to show him some stuff, and he's totally baffled that knob doesn't control the neck pickup. I mean, it's like, I felt like, oh man, I need to put a disclaimer on the back of the guitar or something. But it's just all form and function for me. It's just literally, I got to design a guitar that works for it does everything I want it to do. And, a few people are kind of like, well, that's weird. But then if you play rock and even country, the bridge pickup is more the pickup you're going to be using. And so it makes sense to people after they think about it for a while. It's just that lifetime of Les Paul programming, which volume knob is where.
Mm-hmm. The positioning is the weird thing for a lot of people, I guess. But I think there are a lot of people out there that probably never go to the middle position on a Les Paul, on the switch.
Yeah.
And so much cool stuff comes out of that, just blending the pickups differently.
Oh, yeah.
It really does, and that's why we did it. Now, to me, it's more something I do in the studio than I do live. I just live. I manipulate everything with my fingers and the volume knob so much that I don't. I'm just trying not to think. I never want to think. But in the studio, I do it much more. But you're right. And like I said, you can watch that footage of Page, and it's just like unbelievable. He's getting all those sounds out of the one guitar.
And a one-channel amp.
Well, he also was probably one of the first guys that had his pickups tapped, and all that kind of stuff. Because
there may be a lot more going on than I know. So you're right. But I just think I'm not. It seems like in '69 or whenever it was when they did. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe 70, 71.
Probably wasn't a lot of that going on.
No,
it was probably straight ahead.
I think it was probably pretty straight ahead initially.
Yeah, well, I mean, he had to have a little bit more going on with the Les Paul electronic-wise because, the first couple of albums, recording-wise, it was at Telly.
Yeah.
So, and he had to try to get that kind of bite out of a Les Paul sometimes.
I know.
And that's...
I think that's one of there's so many tones on those records, and I think it's only now that people really figured out exactly what was going on most of it. But it's, and a lot of it has to do also, I think there's some phasing sounds that they got, Eddie Kramer, whoever, or Glenn Johns, Andy Johns, whoever engineered it, by using two mics, and you get some of that introduced into it. And then, were the pickups really out of phase, or was that just a microphone thing? And
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's hard to know, and even harder to recreate.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna ask you. I know we're running along here, so I'm gonna let you go in a minute. But any recording experience or touring experience that really is the top of your list? Like, oh my God, this was so unbelievable for whatever reason. It was like the greatest thing you ever did, or the funniest goddamn thing you ever did, or.
Well, without let's see, God, where do you start? I mean, we've covered a couple of them. The recording with Buddy Guy, and then some of the experience I had in the studio with Mellencamp were definite highlights. The touring with the Allman Brothers was off the chain. They were so influential on me when I was in high school, and then to be up there, it was just like, the holodeck on Star Trek. I mean, you can't, you dream that you could like beam yourself up to this other dimension, and that's what it felt like playing with those guys. Those experiences, and there were lots of gigs, lots of nights with Joe Ely, where everything was so brand new to me that I would literally have these epiphanies on stage where I'd learn a new technique while I was playing the gig. Things would come to me.
That's awesome.
But to this day, I mean, like I played last night with my band, and it was as much fun playing music as I've ever had in my life. I mean, it's not all in I had all these great experiences, but the opportunity to play my tunes with guys that can burn, but at the same time understand all the different influences I've got and be able to respect the tradition of it and then take it someplace new is really, I still buzz when I get to do that.
That is so cool. And that's, if you can have that on a nightly basis when you play, regardless if you're in a little club or in front of 40,000 people, that to me is the ultimate. It really is. It doesn't get much better.
It doesn't, and the trick is to sort of maintain. How do you maintain that joy? Whatever I called it earlier, the joyful obsession, or it's an addiction in a way.
Yeah, it is.
But it's healthy, and so I always try to impress upon. I taught a workshop this weekend, and nobody there is a professional. I don't think anybody there made their living playing guitar, but I tried to impress upon the importance of if you can just keep that, the first time you learn how to play, a Duane Allman lick or a Hendrix song or whatever, keep that feeling at the forefront of what you're doing. The music is going to be better for it.
That is really cool. I mean, I'm looking here. You mentioned the Thunderbirds. A while back, you actually got to play with them, and Chris Isaac too. I mean, Jesus,
I did a record.
man.
Yeah, I did a record with the Thunderbirds after Jimmy left, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's
and
like
Chris Isaac.
It'd be a shorter list of who you haven't played
right.
with.
Well, there's been some fun stuff. I mean, it's not like Landau or Lukather who have it'd be thicker than the encyclopedia of all the records they've played on. But I've been there's a lot of the ratio of stuff that I've played on that I really dug the music is high, and those experiences, when you just you can't believe you're getting paid to do it. Not only to play with these great musicians, with artists you really respect, and to be able to play guitar on a great song is a lot different. I mean, it really means something. And if you come up with a cool lick and the song is like incredibly well written song, and some of these, Ely, Lucinda Williams, James McMurtry, there's a lot of people that I've had the honor of playing with that have written some pretty incredible songs. And so when it just means so much more to me. And they've taught, and I learned so much about songwriting from those people. But to put guitar parts on those songs really is the cherry on top.
What was it like working with Chris Isaac and Herschel Herschel?
They brought me in for overdubs.
Okay.
And so it was me and Chris and the producer. And it was an interesting. They had a real interesting way of working. When I came up with something they really liked, they would have me play it like 20 times, and I'm like, I don't hear any difference. But they would record it like 20 different times, and I presume it was a technique the producer had to make sure he had. I don't know what it was. It's kind of some Phil Spector stuff, but it was. It was a much less spontaneous way of working, at least the stuff I worked on, than some of the other people I have played with. But they knew what they wanted and they knew what they didn't want. And when they found what they wanted, then they just wanted to make sure they got it tweaked exactly how they heard it.
Wow. Well, I guess that's what works for them. So
yeah,
it's what works for them, and it's also that's what we get paid to do. Is because there was a lot of you give them your best. You hear the track go down, and then you kind of my mind catalogs a couple of ideas, and you give them your two best ideas, and they hate both of them. And so then what you're really getting paid for is the ability to turn on a dime and give them 5 other ideas, and the whole time, even as they're throwing out what could have been a really cool part, is just like it doesn't matter. You just say, "I got you. I agree." It's a service industry, and that's my job is to continue to accommodate and be able to on the spot come up with 5 different approaches, and that's what they were doing a lot. Now that I remember back, is we would just and then there would be like 3 or 4 times. I think now that we've got it, let's try something just for fun, different, and then they'd like that, and then we do something else that would be different, But it's all good. I mean,
yeah,
it's all good.
Look, you get to do what you love and get paid for it. It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Are you? You said you just played last night. Are you out touring? What do you want our listeners to know? Is there a new release? Is there a tour? Give us.
I'm working on a new record. I'm trying to finish writing the damn thing. I finished half of it, and then I hate to even utter the word writer's block, but it's not writer's block. I don't want to make the same record again, and I am not satisfied with the songs I'm writing, and so I'm sort of treading water a little bit, doing sessions, half of which people send me stuff and I play on them. I have a studio in my house that I get great sounds, and then the other half I go to studios to do. But I'm sort of doing the water treading thing until I finish writing my next record, and as soon as I get that finished, I'm going to hit it. And, and unfortunately, I had a European tour that was being booked, and my agent, who was also one of my best friends, tragically passed away Christmas Eve, and so that has put that whole thing on hold. And but I just I'm continue to try to learn more about playing music and more about guitar and find a better tone.
And you have a website, right? You do have a website.
Oh yeah. DavidGrissom.com.
All right.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Awesome.
So I'm sort of at that point where I'm playing next weekend, and I'm playing this weekend with Joe Ely and Terry Allen and a bunch of guys for his big birthday bash. Next weekend I'm playing with Charlie and Bruce Robinson and Jack Ingram, and then the week after that I'm going to Brooklyn to play with Andy Hess and Tony Mason. So it's like there's a lot of different stuff going on, but I'm really in the back of my mind the end of at the other side of the football field is my next record. That's what I'm really trying to get finished.
Well, that website link will be on the show, and it will live in
perpetuity
when it goes to our new archive.
There you go.
Link.
Fantastic.
And definitely go out there, check it out, like stuff on the Instagram and the Twitter and all, and
I do have to ask one more question that everybody's like, we're into more and more now asking this. When you're recording, virtual or are you moving air?
Always moving air.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Always.
There you go.
That's
always. I mean, I've got this universal plug-in of a Tweed Deluxe, which is really the closest thing I found to actually playing through a real amp. I really like that. But man, I got so many cool amps, and I got a great mics and great pre's, and there's nothing like it.
Awesome.
Well, if you can have the real thing, and you can do that,
and you have the environment to do it.
If I had $1 for every person that told me I should really get a Kemper Profiler, I could go buy the thing. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I like the sound of air. I like the.
Yeah. Good.
I like the real deal.
Good.
You like crushing diaphragms.
I do, and so I put my 67 right up on the 412 cabinet. People act like I'm going to kill it or something, but back in the day, that's what they did.
Yeah.
It worked then. It still works now. If you can have one.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. All right. Awesome, man. Well, that just endeared you to us even more.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
It's a good thing.
We don't need to baby all these things. I mean, what are we doing with them? Like all these vintage guitars, it's like I'm afraid to take them out. Well, what am I? I'm just taking care of them so I can will them to somebody else. We all need to try to get over that thing and take these things out and play them. And like the same thing with microphones. It's like they're meant to be.
Yeah.
They didn't make these things to
sit in a case.
Sit in the case. It means just throw them up on the 412, and I mean, a 67 on a 412 is heaven.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Well,
we're going to look forward to hearing some more of that heaven when your new release at the end of the field finally comes out, man.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, I hope that's not too long from now.
Yeah, so do we.
And if there's a PRS experience, we'll have to come and say hi if you're there.
Yeah, I was there at the last ones. So if they do it again this year, maybe I'll be there. And please grab me by the collar and say hello. But and also send me links to everything when you
absolutely.
Get this.
Yes.
Done.
Yep, we will have that sent over to you, and we'll make sure the whole Instagram thing and all that. We do all that.
Yeah, this will probably go up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it'll be a couple of weeks from as we record.
Right, and
we'll
let you know as soon as it's up, and you can share it with all the Grissom fans.
Hell yeah,
absolutely.
I'll do that. It's a real pleasure talking with you guys. I enjoyed it very much.
Oh, man.
Very good. Well, likewise. Right back
pleasure was here.
Man. Absolutely. It was great, man. Thank you for taking so much time with us, and much continued success. I hope you get the album done sooner rather than later. And, man, just keep doing what you do and have fun every night. That's awesome.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, man. Have a great rest of the evening. Our pleasure.
Thank you.
And there you have the story.
That cat, man, that's phew.
Yeah,
that's I can't even speak.
He's had a lot of great opportunities and experiences.
Yeah.
That's kind of, man, I don't know that we've interviewed anybody that I could feel like if I could do what they did, I would love to do it more than him and like the gigs he's been on and just how he plays. And, that's probably the closest to home for me so far, I think. Yeah. We got a lot of episodes. I probably, put my foot in my mouth there. But honestly, just the way he plays and the opportunities that he's had and the experiences that he's had.
It's crazy, man.
I mean, and tone for freaking days, dear God.
Yes. He's one of those guys, man. He's just one of those, and I know he's like, Steve Lukather, he's just and it's like, he's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's right there. He can hang out with that crowd.
Yeah. I mean, he's not the same as Luke.
No.
But he's right there in that echelon of player.
Yeah.
I love it. It's
kind of mind-boggling, actually.
Yeah,
when you sit back and you think about it, you just kind of go, whoa. Like it's just, because it's nowhere in, if we were in a stadium, I'd be somewhere in the upper deck, way at the top. And he's like on the other side, it's like, it's not even a world to me that is,
it's not in the same.
It just doesn't, it's like, are you serious?
No, he's and obviously a sweetheart of a guy. So
yeah, and David, we got that whole story. What an awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. Just for being just a great guy to interview. And
absolutely, we'll have all the stuff up on the show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So until next time, my friend.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah, because and then they'll right.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
I'm just Jeff Bober,
and we're always saying
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @Amps and Axes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.